industry itself is a transformational period, right? I mean, we talk about the education of most of the industry has been lacking for almost 20 years. You've seen, the legacies of technology have made it very difficult to improve on the ability to deploy and install, right, from the integrator's perspective, because, as technology has obviously, changed from legacy to modernization, you have to have people that actually can be smart enough to understand how that installation practice can take place, from wiring infrastructure to network infrastructure to deployment of actual, IP address systems. So it's become very difficult to keep up, right. with that evolution of technology.
That's right. And I think, there's new products being rolled out every day, every month, every week, and it's impossible for anybody, if you've been in the industry for 20 years, to continue to maintain a pulse on everything that's coming out. And so it can be challenging, especially when you have such a complex ecosystem of products, from video, access control, alarms, fire safety. I mean, it can make your head spin. So, the simpler products are, the easier they are to understand, I think plays a big role in achieving that.
Yeah, and I think less friction, obviously, that the manufacturers can really establish with the establishment of new products and technology, the better. So simplicity is really important,
right,
in a complex world,
right?
Yeah. Because technology has become more complex. So the rub is you have to make it somewhat easy to ensure that the people and the resources, talent are there, right? So, I mean, C is a great example. Security Industry Association create a program called FAST, which is basically the ability to start bringing in younger talent who are going to be sustainable through this technological advancement. Not to say that there aren't those who have been in the business for a long time that aren't capable. It's just that modernization of systems, understanding IT, understanding cybersecurity, understanding product deployment, and especially in terms of software integration, really leads to young talent, right, to a certain degree. Because at the end of the day, if you really go back how this industry really started in terms of training, we had the ADTs of the world that a lot of us went through that process of understanding, but we had people who understood wiring infrastructure that still had the trades that we need. A lot of that has disappeared to people just clicking on a keyboard versus really wiring and connecting systems. So yeah, we're in like I said, we're in a transitional period and really it's started about 10, 15 years ago when, birth of IP infrastructure and IT became converged within our systems. And so once that happened, it's like this, we call it the U-shaped valley, right? You know, and then all of a sudden you dip until you don't know. And then that hill getting up to that, I understand the new method, takes time. And we're in that, I think, point. And of course, the advent of all these new systems, AI and inclusion of all the things, the fun words that we keep on using. But truly, I mean, birth of that compute environment at the edge and all this makes it even more challenging. Recently, I was at a conference at a security exchange, which basically addressed some of that. Some of the integrators, Sage, which are midstream and very more boutique integrators, really understand some of these challenges, right? You can take it across the board. And so with that in mind, it's really just trying to understand, which integrators will understand what to do and how to do it, how to train and retain that type of talent. And of course, that's one of the biggest challenges in the marketplace today, is retaining that talent, because pay structures, right, are very critical. But also, I think even more than pay, one of the things that was highlighted in this conversation we had at one of the shows I attended was that it's, we've always had levels of attainment. Once you get to Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3, Tech 4, especially in the IT world, it had most people had a feeling like, I'm going to advance in my career and get to a point where maybe I am the boss, or maybe I am, and maybe if I don't want to be the boss, I'm the person who I'm doing what I enjoy doing, right? And I think that that's where the integrator community has become much more and more aware that retaining talent is not just about pay; it's also about feelings of belief that they're part of a community, they're part of this. And we've all changed, so I think that's part of the equation in some cases.
There's a little bit of a generational thing that's happened. And so, the millennials and Gen Zers, and, we grew up in a culture where, keyboard was native to ourselves. Most kids these days, they've never held a drill or a wrench, they couldn't use a voltmeter. I think society's changed a lot, right, in terms of how things have changed. And I think as a society too, we've taught, kids to go into more, let's say, desk jobs, right? And so I think over the last 30 years, you've seen that change. And I think now we're starting to see, because there's a lack of talent, more and more people are starting to pivot away from sort of the traditional desk job and say, okay, I can go into trade work like low voltage wiring or running cables or installing cameras that require some level of physical labor. And I can earn good pay. And it's because there's a shortage, right? So the pay has to increase, right? But what are the consequences of that? The consequences of that are integrators are going to make less money, right? Because if you're charging $125 an hour, but now you have to pay, instead of hiring talent for 50, 60 grand, maybe 10 years ago, now you have to pay that 100 grand or 150,000, right? For a good technician, because like you've said, you have to know so much more. You have to understand the tech stack so much more. How does this integrate with this? How does, the IP side of this, what are the implications on, this device, how is it going to fit into this ecosystem, right? So that you have to be pretty, you have to be well informed to really understand that. So it puts tremendous pressure on integrators to kind of reinvent their business in terms of how do you compete in this new world where the cost of talent has gone up, and you have to train these people, you have to make big investments in their education and so forth. So I think it's a sort of a radical new environment that we're entering into.
Yeah, and I think also with that in mind, right? Systems. So we used to have integrators who were very competent at certain systems, and there were fewer systems basically. I mean, you had Johnson Controls or Tyco, and then you would have, going back in time, Tyco, and then you would have Honeywell, and you'd have certain systems, and everyone would be mastered in those systems. Well, unfortunately, as we've seen, right, the market is shifted. You do have the big players, the Genetechs and others, but what you're seeing an overlay of new technology, new mid-market systems and technologies that are now really, it's like a vacuum effect. Right now, you've got all of these technologies, and you don't have enough people to support them or the knowledge base, and so it's putting more pressure on the manufacturers as well. So now it's like saying, well, if you don't have the talent, we've got to make it simpler to ensure that maybe you have the capabilities. And so, when I speak to the PSA, Physical Security Association's integrators, they're smaller regionals, right? They also are mid-market, like say Sage and others. But what you find is they're realizing, hey, we got to get competent at some of this stuff. We got to have smarter people understanding some of this stuff. Train the trainer, right? But we need to help the manufacturer. They're gonna have to put the money in and the resources to train, right? So it's that there again is another rub, because now it's no longer in the hands only of the integrator. It's now a community, right? It's the integrator, it's the manufacturer, and yes, it's the end users, right?
I couldn't agree more. And I think the challenge for a manufacturer is, or at least the industry is like, you have some competitors in our industry, their portfolio is so massive. It's like mind-boggling to, like, how can you fully understand and digest, well, okay, this line goes with this market, this line goes with this market, then you have 80 different cameras, then you have 800 different mounts because each camera has a different mount. So the whole ecosystem can, totally just be enormously confusing for anybody who's trying to get into the industry and understand how to actually do anything with this whole, sort of soup of products out there, right? And I think that's an enormous challenge. And I think that's one of the things that, we took to heart as we thought to kind of think with a clean sheet of paper is, how do we break this cycle and come to market with something that really philosophically leans into the idea of simplicity, truly, right? Everybody says, oh, we want to be simple, but, SKUs is a huge problem just in one
100%.
example.
100%. And that's actually one of the struggles as a security consultant, a technology consultant specifically in the industry, and been in this industry for too long, 35 years or so. But I've seen the transition of technology, right? And how complicated and difficult it was, how complicated and difficult it is. But the difference is that now we have at least a visible change in some of the ability for the technology to adjust to ensure that the population, right, the end users, the pull, becomes more accurate, more simplistic, more, and I won't say simplistic, more frictionless. I think I hate the word frictionless, but it is truly what we're trying to accomplish here in this industry. Less friction, demanding that we work to ensure that the things that are complicated should not be put in the hands of those at the end of the game. That should have been already built into the system.
That's right. It should be the opposite of the TSA, right? Experience.
Yeah, totally correct. Right. And I think, but that means that engineers, designers of technology have to be modernized in their methodology. You can't take a legacy process and adapt it to a modern world. Right. It becomes dysfunctional. And one of the challenges, I think this is interesting because it leads to an interesting topic. It's how technology and systems have been designed in the security industry for years. It was always inside out. We built our own dog food, right? We created our own stuff to support our own people. The world has changed. It's flipped. It's coming from the outside in. And that outside in challenge, right, is challenging our very fabric of our business, our industry. And what it does is it also puts us on a very narrow schedule to say, if you do not do this, you will no longer be important.
So can you give me an example?
I do a thing that with Paul Rothman at the Security Systems News. Actually, it's a Security Executive magazine. I never get it right. No matter what we do is we go to the CES show, Consumer Electronics Show. And everybody go, why is Pierre at the Consumer Electronics Show? Well, what's fascinating is what I've realized in the past 5 years, that I see the transformation of global products and technology entering the security industry. And we're finding is some of those products or services or technologies are starting to sway the market and change the way people are seeing products and technology. So all of a sudden, it's like anything, right? When I use a mobile credential or mobile system as a private citizen, not employed, I use it for my public use. I use it for my door, my house, whatever. I say, well, I'm doing it here. Why can't I do it at my business? And all of a sudden, that has changed how we approach technology development. People are going, if I could do it there, why can't I do it here? That was the evolution of cloud, right? Cloud all of a sudden became important only because everyone, from a mobile credential perspective or using application or applets to be able to do certain things, look, at the end of the day, that's kind of the consumption model. If people are consuming it and the very companies you work for aren't, then people start questioning, why can't I do this? And put pressure on that model.